wife of Ed Ullman, managing pharmacist at Wellness RX Pharmacy and Wellness Center. Our goal at the Wellness Center is to blend traditional pharmacy with natural medicine. As part of our ongoing series to highlight the best of the Hudson Valley healers, I'm proud to introduce Ricarda O'Conner today. She is a professionally trained practitioner in energy medicine. Her areas of expertise are in sound therapy, Reiki, matrix energetics, and hypnosis. Ricarda is a true healer of energy medicine. I have personally experienced both private and group sessions with her, and I can attest that I have never felt more relaxed and more at peace than I did from her treatments. Each time was an amazing and very positive experience for me. Today we will be hearing from Ricarda and her wisdom. One of our team members at Wellness RX, Beth Rennick, will be conducting the conversation with Ricarda today. Beth is a metaphysical healer who also specializes in Reiki, sound energy, and matrix energetics. Beth, I'll pass the program on to you. Thank you both for being here.
Ricarda, it's a pleasure to be with you.
As always, it's a pleasure to be with you too.
Thank you, thank you. So I wanted to talk about energy today and help people to understand maybe a little bit more than they already do. Maybe we could start by talking about how energy relates to the human body.
Well, that's a big topic. Where do I start? I would say begin by understanding that we are part of the natural world. Human beings are just like the animals and the plants and everything. We're part of the natural world. And as such, we are energetically connected in the same way that the natural world is. We expand and we contract. Our human consciousness, which we all think is what we're thinking, has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the vibrational level of our well-being. That's on a cellular level. So it's a full-on physical experience. And consciousness, as it's been studied endlessly by physicists for a long time, is the vibrations go out, entangle with other consciousness, and vibrations come back in. Mm-hmm. So when you're thinking of energy and your body and what that means, it means that you are basically a multi-dimensional vibrational being. Mm-hmm. And as such, you have the ability, and we all have it, to change our vibration and begin to have a different experience. It happens on an energetic level, but it plays out for real in the physical world and in the health and well-being of our bodies.
Yeah, that's very true. So I think especially in these particular times where we're having a lot of information coming at us, it seems as though it's important to have a daily practice. You know, as one of your students, I'm thrilled to be your student. We've been working together for 4 years, and one of the biggest and best lessons I learned from you was to have a daily spiritual practice, something that I could attune to, something that I could adjust my own energy in some simple ways. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
I will, but let me double it back, because one of my doctors years and years ago said, you know, our physical bodies are not meant to live in the time that we are in. Physically, our bodies are made to live in a simple community with your family, a few neighbors, you're working the land, you don't get a whole lot of information. You know what's happening with the people immediately around you, and that is your area of focus and responsibility. But we're living in this age now where we're getting information from all over the world instantaneously. Yeah. We know all of the suffering that's happening in, with the Rohingya and the person, down the street has cancer, and you know that too because somebody's on Facebook posting it.
Right.
And it's coming in and coming in and coming in and coming in, and our bodies don't know how to process that.
Mm.
So yes, we have these incredible devices that connect us constantly to everything that's happening on the planet. And yes, we carry these cool little computers around in our pocket. But when you're thinking about the health of your physical body, you have to think about, what is healthy for me? What is the primary vibration of me? What is my harmony in consciousness? And how do I get back there every day on a regular basis? Right now, we're seeing incredible levels of stress. I mean, everything in the world is topsy-turvy, and then we all have COVID-19 on top of it.
Right.
And that is, the uncertainty is mind-boggling and exhausting. So what's the antidote to that? What do you do to say, wait a second, you don't want to just pretend it's not happening, that doesn't work. You don't want to just ignore it and say, well, it's nothing, it's a hoax. That doesn't work. But a daily practice, a daily spiritual practice is the same as you get up in the morning, you brush your teeth, you exercise, you try to eat healthfully, you drink water, all these things. So I consider a spiritual practice to be that practical. And it starts with breath work and meditation. Maybe you like to ride a bike every day. Maybe you love to walk. Maybe you love to garden. Notice I'm using the words of pleasure, things that you love, things that increase the expansive nature of your consciousness, and things that absolutely calm you down. So you've heard the term loving detachment. It gets thrown around a lot. It doesn't mean disconnect. It means that you say, okay, I'm over here, you're over there. I can be in a great state of compassion for you and what is happening with you. But I'm not in the middle of your experience or your condition. And I claim my right to lovingly disengage on a regular basis to take care of myself, energetically first. My favorite thing to teach people, and it comes out of a yoga practice for a long time, is simply how to breathe. Suddenly breath work has really gotten popular, and I'm noticing all these new people that are doing workshops, and it's all about the breath, but these are ancient techniques. This goes back to, every meditation technique on the planet starts with the breath. And you don't have to be fancy about it. If you can learn to slow your breath down, begin to have your inhale and your exhale be long and slow and even, you are automatically going to calm your nervous system down, quiet your mind from jumping all around, and lovingly detach from all of the interference that is jacking you up. So interestingly, one of the most extraordinary things that you can do, if you enjoy to do that, is make music of any kind. Singing, even if you are singing along to the radio, or singing in your shower. If you play a musical instrument, several of my clients are musicians, and I'm like, just sit down at the piano for about an hour tomorrow and turn your phone off and just play. So the act of engaging your focused awareness on something that opens up, that doesn't have a storyline, it moves you from being in a kind of a fixed, tense state to actually vibrationally moving into an expansive state of concentration and focus, I could get all into the 0 point field right now, but I'm going to wait a second, and because you've got a question, I think, about this.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's, so those of us who really lean into our empathic gifts, it can be a little bit trying to not lean too far into it. And I think you've really sort of touched on the importance of having loving attachment.
And boundaries.
Right.
Yeah.
Being able to be sympathetic, but yet not put yourself right into the flux of what the person's feeling or experiencing. We have no idea what people are going through for any particular reason.
Well, it also, and especially lately, the news has just been devastating. One terrible story after another.
Yeah.
And I think it requires a real discipline about claiming your boundaries, to not fall into a state of utter despair about some of the really difficult things that are happening on the planet at the moment.
Yeah.
So being able to have your boundaries and practice compassion, but in a lovingly detached fashion, doesn't mean you don't care. It just means that you're making space for perhaps this situation that's devastating to change. If you're focused only on your illness, or only on your pain, or only on that difficult situation that's happening for a friend, or that awful thing that's happening, or right now everybody's going to the election. It's like, don't focus on the election. What can you do? Can you be active? Can you vote? I mean, simply, it's like the more you put your focused awareness on something that contracts, the more that's going to happen for you.
Yeah.
So consciousness, because it's vibrational in nature, the more you can relax, there's where meditation comes in. Automatically, it quiets down all of that chatter.
Right.
And all of the interference that's coming at you from news stories, or your negative uncle, or that terrible thing you had with your mother like 40 years ago.
Right.
Or maybe you're really ill. I've seen and worked with people who were really seriously life-threatening ill. And I've seen what appears to be miraculous transformations when they just decided not to focus on their illness. They're in treatment, working with allopathic doctors as well as with myself. They're spending time with their children, they're meditating, they're doing the things that they love to do. And so the focus becomes on what expands my nature,
Right.
what expands my consciousness. When that starts to happen, automatically you're living in your heart, as we say.
Yeah.
You start to tap back into the things that you love, the things that bring you joy. And those can be very, very simple things, but when that starts to happen, and the focus goes off the constricted pattern and starts to open back up, what happens vibrationally in your body, not just your body, but in your life, but especially if you're dealing with an illness, and I've seen this happen over and over again, is pretty interesting. Maybe you were given you only have a few months to live, and suddenly you're here for 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 or 20 years more. Tumors shrink. Interesting things happen.
Yeah.
When you hear a doctor say it's incurable, it just means it's not curable by any of the limited means you think are available.
And that's a really important thing to note, because it's important to know that we don't have a predetermined path that we're following. We maybe have a destiny to some people. We maybe have ideas and wishes, but even this minute, this hour, this day, we can change our path. We can make a decision that totally shifts how we have been conducting our lives and suddenly move into this great state of healing.
So I brought a couple of books along. I just grabbed them at the last minute before I left the house, and that segues so perfectly into this book, which I highly recommend. This is The Biology of Belief by Dr. Bruce Lipton. He's a cell biologist, and this might have been his first book. He's
I think so.
got quite a few of them. This goes into literally the scientific, on a cellular, molecular level of what happens in your body when you begin to change your belief system. And it is really about the science of epigenetics, which is debunks the idea that your DNA calls all the shots. If you have a pattern of illness in your family, it's hereditary, you're going to have it. Not so,
Yeah.
because in families, some may get that illness and some may not. So epigenetics looks at it differently. It looks at your cell's ability to vibrate and change according to the information that's coming in. And all of the ascended masters and meditation teachers and psychologists and you name it are talking about if you can change the way you think, if you can begin to change your belief patterns, you can change anything in your life. So this is the science of how that happens. And it's easy to understand this book, but I mean, he really gets into the nitty-gritty of what's going on physically in the body when you go from, say, I can't stand this situation, I've had it for so long, and then one day you just say, you know what, I'm just gonna give it up, which is the heart of forgiveness, right?
Yeah.
You know what, it's taking up too much of my attention and my awareness, and I'd rather be happy.
Yeah.
And what happens when you have a switch like that is this biochemical flood of different information that comes through your cells. That kind of really being in a state of open-heartedness and really being willing, this is the best part about getting well, or changing anything, is that you don't even need to know how to do it. You just have to be willing to. I'm willing to have a different experience. I'm willing for something to change.
Right.
And automatically you tap into a place where your consciousness, your vibration begins to open and flow.
And that really brings up what you and I do, Ricarda. We hold space for people and help them to clear away maybe some excess energy so that they can maybe reach this place more completely. And they are doing the healing themselves. We're just helping to...
Everyone does their own healing.
Yeah.
Anyone that works in energy medicine in any way, shape, or form, you may get the reputation as being the most incredible healer in the world, but truthfully, it's not about that. It never has been about that. It's about facilitating, creating, helping to create a container, as we say, where a person can relax and say, and start to really feel a different shift in consciousness. That's it.
Yeah, that's the best. It is the most wonderful thing to see somebody, get on the table, feeling the way they do, looking the way they do, and to have it all shift amazingly. And just to know that they did so much of it. And we were just
And so
helping.
the power of human touch, and as you know, if you're practicing Reiki, you are actively becoming the channel by which divine intelligent energy, Reiki, can come through you. We are all part of that. We all have our own individual energy, and yet we're in the natural world, part of the greater field, and so we are vibrating at that level as well. And so that a beautiful technique that is, where you're just literally not doing anything, not putting your hands on to make a difference, but you're actually working as a conduit to bring the Reiki, the divine intelligent energy, through it's like putting a busto in I'll have an extra shot of energy, please. And that's really what it is.
Yep.
Sound, I am madly in love with sound at this point, working especially with big gongs, which is just, it just is pretty quick, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Because it brings people very quickly from any kind of mental verbal state into a place.
Right, which is the best place to be.
Nervous system goes from fight or flight to rest and digest. Parasympathetic kicks in. Vagus nerve starts to vibrate correctly. Organ systems start to recalibrate. Nervous system calms right down. And pretty quickly you go into, as Patty said, a very deep state of relaxation. I'm getting, as I get older, the simpler it is for me, the better. I really believe truly, if you can relax enough every single day, if you can let go enough every day, not only will you keep yourself healthy, but you will open yourself up to all sorts of new possibilities.
Yeah. Yeah, opening yourself up to new possibilities, letting go of what no longer serves you, or if you've been feeling stuck, or if you're looking for information and answers to where do I go in this relationship, or am I ready for a new relationship? I think these are all great things that come out of this work. And sometimes it's quite surprising. You just all of a sudden find yourself, oh, I don't feel the same way I used to. I don't feel like I'm in this trauma state.
Right, and so Richard Bartlett, who was the extraordinary man who created matrix energetics, as he said, it's a consciousness technology, it's not a mode of healing. And it really kind of evolved from his work as a naturopath and a chiropractor. And he got very interested in quantum physics, scalar physics, and other fancy math to kind of come to understand what he was seeing happen in his practice. He said famously, if you change your vibration, the physics of everything around you will change to be in harmony with it. So that's basically what Dr. Lipton is talking about on a cellular level, what happens when belief patterns start to shift. So you texted me this morning, can you just tell everybody what that was? The
Elizabeth Gilbert little video about her experience with having a hummingbird fly into her living room and feeling that deep love of nature coming into her living space, and then just feeling that, oh, I don't want the bird to get hurt, and having the intention that I hope the bird can find its way out of the home safely, and it did. And she just started talking to the bird and sharing love, and the bird got out successfully, and then she said, it reminds me of the intention I hold in my life, which is to constantly live in a state of surprise, being willing to be surprised, and to live in an interesting, surprise-filled way with spirit.
And she said that living in a state of expecting to be surprised was part of her spiritual practice, correct?
Yes, that was probably more of it. Oh, goodness.
To which I texted back to Beth, know nothing, no, K-N-O-W, know nothing, access everything, which was something that was taught to me many years ago. And I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, but what does that mean? And we get so weighted and freighted with what we think is going on, or what we think the world is about, or who we think we are. Underneath everything, underneath all of those stories and all of those overlays, and all of our own opinions and other people's opinions about us, is actually that same small magical child who thought the world was amazing and that they could do everything. And you watch a little kid, and they're so much fun to be around, little ones, because everything is possible and their imaginations are wild. So if you say, okay, I'm willing to kind of just put on hold all the things I think I know, go into that state, as the Buddhists would say, of beginner's mind, of really emptying yourself and just saying, what if I didn't know what was happening? Wonder what could fill that moment. So know nothing and access everything is really a sweet little koan about getting as empty and simple as possible, which then actually relaxes you when your brain's not going like this.
Mm-hmm.
And the more relaxed you get, the more your vibration begins to expand.
Right.
And the more you expand, the more in touch you are energetically with the greater field,
Yeah.
the 0 point field as we call it, or the unified field. And in the unified field, I'm just going to double back and say that it's called 0 point because the scientists that have take subatomic material down to a point that's so cold, everything should stop, but nothing stops. It's like, at the super subatomic particle level of the natural world, everything is communicating, moving, nothing stops. So some of the scientists that have studied that field call it the mind of God, because they know that this huge field of energy exists. They know that it's like kind of the container that everything else is in. It's like the source of everything. They know that it is energetically its full potential and possibility. And there's been so many interesting experiments where when someone starts to use their focus in a certain way, whatever is happening in the greater field sets up to give them that result. Does this make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you begin to say, well, I think it's this way, but what if it isn't? What if it's different? Automatically, you start to go into that place of know nothing,
Mm-hmm.
and automatically you're going to access more information and a change of vibration in the field.
Right. So when we introduce that into a healing session or a
Mhm.
sound session, that can open up so many doors
Right.
and help to release
Right.
all kinds of things.
Right, and as practitioners, we have to do that for ourselves every single day, so that when you're
Absolutely.
actually working with other human beings, whatever your own stuff is, you want that
Yeah.
completely out the door.
Yeah.
So that you're coming there in that state of utter simplicity and reverence, really, for just how things can change and how quickly they can change, and how every human being knows how to do it already, even if they don't think they do.
Yeah, I was just listening to a book on Audible, Seed of the Soul, by Gary Zukav, and he was talking about reverence, finding reverence, and I think it's fantastic. I think it's a great reminder for us, even though that book is quite old, but
It's a beautiful book.
yeah.
I think I first read that book when I was in my 30s, amazingly enough. I'm so much older now.
So talking about children, because Reiki has always been something that's been very accessible for children to benefit from. Children in the past have learned how to do Reiki for themselves, much like adults have. So having children myself, I'm particularly happy but also sensitive to how these practices can help children, and how sometimes when we teach children, they in turn can help the adults in their lives also just sort of vibrate differently, or learn from their children, because they're constantly in this state of play and imagination. And I think that's it's one of the biggest reminders for myself each day, as I may tend to get a little too involved in what I need to do and accomplish, and I get that sometimes really bold reminder from
Yes, your child says something and it's like, okay, time to lighten up.
yeah.
Says one of my teachers, she was a Hawaiian kahuna, used to say, imagination is the doorway to high sense perception. High sense perception is certain people seem to have it, and people think, oh, well, I don't. Well, yeah, you probably do. You just haven't experienced it before or been permitted
Yeah.
to explore it. imagination, if you can imagine a different outcome, automatically, in consciousness and biochemically, vibrationally, you actually make contact and entangle with that different outcome. And it may not happen immediately. It may take a while,
Right.
but you have connected with a different possibility and set a focused awareness which waits a potential for something different to happen. Healing works that way. Oh, here's a great example. I mean, years ago, friends of mine that waited, three sets of friends that waited until they were well into their 30s to start families. And they were having trouble starting families. And so they gave up and made plans to adopt. And as soon as they made plans to adopt and started focusing on, like, oh my God, fertility, they all got pregnant. And they were all having their own baby and adopting a baby at the same time. 3 different families. It was uncanny.
Wow.
It was as soon as the focus on that thing relaxed,
Right.
that thing's, I mean,
Right.
coincidental? I don't think so.
I don't know, I think the physicists would tell us that there's not a coincidence with
Yeah.
that, yeah. So, as I was explaining to my children, one of the silver linings of us being in our homes much more than we ever have been is that we have more of an opportunity to spend time with those that are close to us, that we love, and to be outside. So, talking about imagination, talking about finding more of that neutral place of vibration.
When I still lived in the city, my veterinarian used to send people to me with their dogs for Reiki. And they would come and they would bring their dogs. I still work on pets. I usually go to the pets now.
Yeah.
And dogs and cats relax the second you put your hands on them.
Right.
They take as much as they want, and when they've had enough, they finish the session themselves. They get up, and that's it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to work on animals because they don't have any of the mental overlay and perception and maybe blockage that you get with human beings, especially older ones.
Yeah.
Because the older we get, the more baggage we have, unless we actively work to put the bags down. So working with children is similar because they are curious and have that sense of, well, this is kind of strange, but this is kind of fun, and that's it. So with kids, I find that, the more fun it is, the better. And with adults also, I really truly believe if you're having a good time, even if you're going through something really horrifically difficult, if you can find a way to laugh, if you've got a dark sense of humor, all the better. Some of the COVID jokes have just been off the charts, but it cracks the constricted pattern. Humor cracks it. And so, that sense of lightness and play and actively saying, this is part of my spiritual practice. This is good for my health. I'm going to claim this right now. Think of it. Who are your favorite people to be around? The ones that are funny.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. And when you can allow yourself, myself, to bring more humor into those scenarios and there's those relationships, even people that we sometimes not always having an easy time with.
Especially those people.
Yeah.
Especially those people. I had an interesting conversation with my 93-year-old aunt. She called from California. And I said, are you okay? And she said, I'd like you to help me with something. I was like, really? Okay, what? And she was kind of mad at somebody a little bit. She felt that she hadn't been appreciated. And I was so touched that she actually reached out because she wanted that to be different. And I was able to reach out and give her, what if it's this instead of this? What if it's this? And what about this? And I tossed out all sorts of possibilities. And as she embraced those different things, whatever had hurt her feelings dissolved away. And she started making a joke of her response. She started joking about it, and it completely dissolved. So she went from really being upset, but being willing not to be upset, to being fine, absolutely fine, open-hearted, relaxed, and in a state of great forgiveness and unconditional love.
So that was, in a sense, a healing session.
Totally.
So,
One of my favorite phone conversations I've ever had with her. That, it can be, if we have a sense of possibility, when we really, really, really don't think there's a possibility anymore, when we get that low, and we've all had it, all of us, that's the moment when if you have an active spiritual practice, you will always be able to navigate those dark turns and come out of them. If you don't, then you need your friends around you. You need to follow the things that you love, to spend time in nature, to be around the people that make you laugh. Over and over again, you will find your way back. And believe me, I don't think any of us gets out of a life without going through times of great struggle and despair. It's just part of a life. But we can only kind of see what we see. And if you understand that in the bigger picture of things, in the natural world, where there are infinite possibilities, things always can change and realign. And sometimes it gets really magical. Years ago at a advanced matrix energetics training, a very accomplished healer with a big practice was lamenting how sometimes people would change instantly, and sometimes they wouldn't. And Dr. Bartlett said, when a transformation occurs instantaneously, we call it a miracle. A miracle that takes place over time, we call a process. And both of them are equally valid. One is not better than another. So sometimes when you're going through a difficult time, it seems to take forever. There's all kinds of nuggets to be mined as you go through that process.
yeah.
And you can come out of it really, truly transformed.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Ricarda. I can definitely say my healing path has been a process. I don't think there were too many miracles, and I was okay with that. That was really what I needed. I personally needed to take my healing path slower. There was a lot of fear, and a lot of it was confusing. I wasn't able to figure out why. And then I let go of the need to find out why. And that's when things started to really, come forward. So one of the things that you did say a couple of years back was that you thought one of, or maybe the reason that we're here in this human experience is to be happy, to enjoy it. And then along the way, there's lessons too.
Well, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I really like to have a good time. And I've had my share of really challenging times.
Yeah.
Believe me. We're not meant here to be in this experience, I don't think, to struggle. Well, we're going to struggle a little bit, probably that's going to be part of it, but suffering is optional. You've heard that phrase?
Oh,
I believe that for me and for for the things that I've seen happen that were really mind-blowing, always happened when things got soft and light and fun. So if our happiness is up to us, if happiness is a personal responsibility, and I believe that it is, why not claim it? Why not claim it? And if I really want to be happy every day, if I'm focused on all the things that would make me miserable, on my shortcomings and my aches and my pains and my regrets and blah, 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 I'm not going to be happy.
Yeah.
I embrace my warts and my foibles and all of my wounds and still go forth.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here to talk to me today and to share so many great tidbits with us. I mean, these are invaluable to have a happy life.
I have two more books that I brought with me that I grabbed. The Biology of Belief is just a great book. This one, if you're interested in really understanding what the unified field is about, this is a fabulous book by Lynn McTaggart. She's got a lot of really good books out. I think this might have been her first one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the story of all of the scientists that discovered the unified field and the zero-point field. And many of them, it's very easy to understand the science in it. It's kind of like a whodunit in a way. Some of these researchers started out to actually debunk things like acupuncture and energy and whatever, and set out experiments that should have said the opposite of what they found. And some of them risked their careers to follow the information. So if you really want to understand what it's like to be completely connected in the natural world, this book will help you understand it. And then this little book, Les Femi, a researcher and a PhD, called The Open Focus Brain. And as I was talking about where we put our focused awareness, how we focus our attention, when I said happiness, do I focus on, do I focus on my hips are killing me, or just go for a walk because that'll make me happy and I know I'll feel better later, right?
Right.
I mean, I don't mean to be glib, but for me, it's kind of that simple. But this is a very particular how to do that and what's happening. And as he said, harnessing the power of attention to heal mind and body. And it's a lovely, lovely little book. One of the experiments that has been done is they took classical musicians. They each had the same piece of music. One was practicing the piano and actually rehearsing. The other one didn't have a piano. They were going through the score and rehearsing without a piano. When it was time to play, both of them had the same skills. So the focused awareness of the musician without an instrument was clear enough that the physiology knew what to do when it was time to put hands on keys.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what this is about.
Yeah.
So it can get really, we've all had moments in our life where we're like, wow, I can't believe that worked out so well, or just the right piece of information comes, the phone call from the whatever, and we go, that's so magical, that's so magical. Well, actually, that's it. That's the way the natural world works. And the more we can be in a state of open focus, that state of wonder, that state of surprise is part of my spiritual practice, that state of, I don't know anything, I wonder what's going to come. The more we access in the big field, the more information comes our way, the more potential comes our way, the more possibility to have a different experience on every level. On every level.
So let's take that scientific example right there. So you had somebody who was practicing the piece without a piano, but knew how to play it, because scientists have shown us through many studies that the brain doesn't necessarily know that the body is or isn't.
Exactly. Your neurology will follow where your focus
Right.
is going. Your brain and your neurology will follow that.
So when we're working with somebody and they are dealing with whether it's a emotional situation, a physical, could be everything, and they want to change it, but they have some deep pattern, or maybe they have a really deep inner critic that they're trying to turn down the volume, and perhaps you give them a mantra to use, and maybe at first they don't necessarily believe the mantra and they're just sort of going along with it, or maybe they're just even questioning whether, well, can that work? That's the science that tells us that this can work.
Exactly.
And it just comes down to deciding, I don't want that, I would like this. So
Well, or just being simply, as I said earlier, willing to have a different experience or willing to change.
yeah,
That's so different from saying, I've got to change this.
right,
I've got to fix this.
Right.
It's like, well, okay, then you're focused on what's not going right.
right,
And that's where your focus is. But if you're like,
Right.
well, I'm willing for this to be different, automatically your vibration, your consciousness expands,
Yeah.
and you entangle in the greater field with different information, enabling you to have a different experience.
So when I was starting out as a practitioner and doing energy work, and then going home to a beautiful little family, but also having their own gifts and strong empathic tendencies, one of the things that you told me that was just the best was, go home, turn off your phone, turn on some really funny TV. And that was like, somebody just told me to watch TV. But that's been an immense help, is to, as Liz Gilbert says, expect to be surprised. Not turn off my life, but give myself permission to say, I've done enough for today. I showed up, I did my spiritual practices, and I did the best I could. And now it's time for me to rest and digest and to just
Kick back and watch something funny,
yeah,
or play music, or
yeah,
play with your kids,
or go for a walk.
go for a walk.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Ricarda.
You're welcome.
Wonderful.
It's wonderful being here. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Patty and Ed.
And thank you to Pure Mountain Yoga for housing us for this wonderful interview.